Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Tonight I'm doing a remastered version of a previous tutorial and an updated version essentially. It's on a tutorial I did probably nearly about a year ago on adding texture to your images. So the one that I did previously was a little bit of a hard way to do it, I guess. Not necessarily hard, but kind of like inconvenient or in a way, or tedious. And look, when it comes to skin editing, a lot of the time it can be very tedious and retouching in general. But this tutorial I'm going to do tonight is just something that I've been doing over the past few months, and I've found it works a lot better for me when adding texture into a photograph. I think it makes it look a lot more natural, and it's just kind of a bit easier, I think, than my last tutorial. I think my last tutorial was sharpening the pixels too much, and it just didn't look right. So I think I'm past that point of sharpening and texturing my images like that, and this is the method I like to use now. So I thought I would share it with you guys because I just find it works a lot easier, but I guess you guys can decide for yourself whether you think that's a better method or not. So first off, I'm just going to explain a couple of the layers that I've got down here. So I've already done my basic retouching. So I've got my frequency separation layers just here, so the high and low layer. This layer here, Dodge and Burn, is not actually meant to be in that group, frequency separation. So my high layer is the texture layer, and the low layer is just the colouring underneath. And see there what both of those layers are doing. So I've done quite a few videos, or not videos necessarily, on frequency separation, but I've mentioned it a lot beforehand, and there's plenty of frequency separation tutorials out there. I am planning on doing a more detailed one soon, but basically what it is, you have a high layer, you have a low layer, and high layer is the texture layer, the low layer is the colors, and it's really a good way of removing blemishes from the face, improving texture. It's just a really good way to do it by using frequency separation. And I feel like if you want to get texture into your images more, it's a good way to edit because it will retain a lot of the texture, especially in skin. So I would definitely recommend that to be a main method of retouching if you're retouching skin. So I would start off with that and just do any basic retouching that you need to do. Another way I would like to sort of just put out there to retain texture in your images is to shoot raw. So that's always kind of like a staple thing. You know, if you shoot raw, you're going to have a lot more quality in your images. You'll have a lot more to work with, essentially. So just make sure that your images have some sort of texture in them already. Like, as you can see with Kat's skin tone, you can see that I've still left the texture in there, and I've still captured quite a bit of texture on her face. So that's really making sure that the photo is sharp in the first place is a good place to start. So after that, I usually move on to dodging and burning. So that will be this layer here. So that's just sort of like any basic dodging and burning on the face is usually good to do after skin editing. I'm going to even do a little bit more in this tutorial, but as I said, main thing will be adding texture to the skin tone. So just to make things easier, I'm going to flatten the image now so you guys don't have to get confused with all these layers. So we'll flatten that, and it'll make it easier for us. Like, I've saved that as a PSD, so in the layers, so it'll make it a little bit easier for us to work on the texture now, because that will be the main part of the image. So first off, I'm going to get the lasso tool, which is just up here, and I'm going to grab an area that's got quite a bit of texture in it. So this area here is quite good. I'm going to set my feathering more to around 30 pixels, because if it's too feathered, you might end up picking up the texture around the nose, and we don't really need that texture. So I'm going to select just this area here of her skin. And you can either do Control-C or edit and then copy that selection. And just deselect. Now you can paste or Control-V, and you've got that area of skin on a new layer. So what we're going to do to make this like a base for our texture is we're going to create a high pass. So we'll go to Filter, Other, High Pass, and just make sure that layer 1 is selected. So around 5.1 is fine. It depends how much texture your image needs. You can always build upon it gradually, which is more or less what I like to do, because if I find if I go too strong straight off, it can look overly sharp by the time I finish. So I just like to start off small at first. So 5.1 pixels should be fine. So we'll click OK. So obviously we don't want this huge grey patch of skin on Kat's face. So we're going to set that to vivid light under the blending modes. So vivid light will just add that little bit more light to the pores, as you can see. So if I was to go overlay, it would more or less be just giving it a really slight sharpen, and you can't really see the texture very well. But if we go vivid again, you can see that it's just kind of lighter, and it's just creating that little bit more texture. So I'm just going to move this to an area of Kat's face where I think it probably needs a little bit more texture. Especially where the light is hitting her face is a really good place to start. So anywhere where the light's kind of really standing out, which on her cheekbone it is, so I might just kind of move it to around this position and leave that there. So if we add it in the areas where there's a little bit more light, it stands out that little bit more, and you can see that her face and her skin does have that texture. If we just click the eye on this one, you can see what that's done. So if you want to move more of these layers around, all you have to do, and you just want the same layer, all you have to do is drag this layer into this little box here, which is new layer, so it'll duplicate it. And if you do that, then you can kind of get a more detailed pore if you want more detail in a specific area, or you can move it to somewhere else on the face. So you can move it maybe just over the lighter areas, or maybe down just a little bit, so it makes it look like she's got a little bit more texture just in the hollows of her cheek. And then you can just duplicate it again. This can be tedious at times, don't get me wrong. I think it can be a little bit hard to do sometimes, but it's kind of good. You can kind of take it a little bit more slow with this and see what's working. So if you're moving it over a place like the nose and it's looking just that little bit too textured in spots, you can grab the eraser tool and set the opacity to probably around 30%. Make sure it's a soft brush and just kind of brush over the areas where you want it to be a little bit softer, so you can kind of shape it to the model's face. Okay, so I'm just going to keep duplicating those layers. I'm going to end up with quite a few layers in the end. And wherever you're duplicating, the last layer that you've duplicated, it'll come up upon that layer. So just here, as you can see. So I'm just going to move it down to the areas where the light is mainly hitting her face. And just kind of grab the eraser every now and then just to sort of soften it in certain spots. So there's quite a bit of light up here. So I'm going to duplicate a few more layers. So the layer will come down here probably. Yeah. So I'm going to move that up here. And I'm going to duplicate it again. And again. I think this way gives you a little bit more control on where you put the texture on the face as well. I think it kind of works out a little bit easier that way. So if you're wanting certain areas of the texture to stand out a little bit more, what you can do is create a new dodging and burning layer. So all you have to do is hold down Alt and click on the new layer button. Then you need to change the mode to overlay and fill with overlay neutral color and press OK. So this grey layer now has popped up. So what you need to do with this grey layer is grab the dodge tool or the burn tool, whatever works for you. So the burn will darken, the dodge will brighten. So we're going to grab highlights because I've really lightened a lot of the midtones in the photograph. So I think to make the texture stand out that little bit more, we need to go over some of the areas with the highlights. So I'm just going to make the brush a little bit bigger. Okay, and then I'm just going to go over some of the areas where the light is really hitting Kat's skin. Just kind of making sure that it's a little bit on the softer side. So on her chin. And just on her nose, I'm going to grab a smaller brush and I'm going to just trace up where that highlight is hitting. And just onto her brow bone as well. And on her forehead. So we'll move the brush back up to a bigger size. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out in a minute so you guys can see what this looks like a little bit easier. Just wanted to show you guys the texture of the image and what that's doing. So I'll zoom out so we can fit that on screen. So I'm going to take a snapshot and show you guys what the before was. So that was the before and that's the after. So you can see a little bit of the dodging. So if you want that texture to be even stronger, what I would recommend doing is taking another selection of the image. So we'll go back to the background layer. We have to do this to take another selection and grab another area just around the same area as before. Copy and paste it into the image. And we'll just do another high pass. So filter other high pass, and we're going to up it this time to around, let's say 13. And now we're going to set it to vivid light again. So as you can see, even more texture to work with there. If you want to, you can keep building upon the texture until it suits what you're after. So I'm just going to remove some of the texture around there. We really want the texture to be quite stand out on the cheekbones, I think. It's always a good place to start. And then you can duplicate that layer again and again. So we'll probably just move this up here. That looks good there. And again, forgot that it was up here. Have to bring it down. And even if it's a little bit too strong in certain areas, I would also recommend just bringing the opacity down on it. So you can still keep a little bit of the texture, but maybe not as much. So I'm going to zoom out again, and as you can see, that's really starting to build upon the texture in Kat's skin tone. So I'm going to take another snapshot, and I'll show you guys the before. So that's the before, and that's the after. So you're really starting to get a bit more texture in the skin tone, and you can really build upon it as much as you like. As I said, you're going to have a lot of layers here, so usually I would just probably save it as a PSD after this, and then just flatten it, and then begin maybe doing your toning in a different file. That might be a little bit easier so you don't get so many layers in one image that you're having to work with. But anyway, guys, I really hope you learned something through this tutorial, and I hope you enjoyed it. I know this is one of the things that I've struggled with for a while, really, just getting skin tones to look a little bit sharper and have a little bit more texture in them. So I hope this helps you guys out a little bit, and yeah, if you guys do use this method of adding texture into your photographs, please let me know and show me your photos, because I would love to see them. And yeah, just keep sending through requests, and I'll hopefully get around to them soon. I am looking at doing possibly 3 videos a week now, if I can swing it. So I've started sort of doing a few more videos a little bit more regularly. I would like to stick to 3 videos a week. It's probably not always going to be possible, but we'll see how we go. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.